Right. What, I mean, and some of our work, all of you who are listening in, we teach about the peaceful warrior. And one of the concepts that we teach is dealing with conflict heartfully. So we had one of those moments of just technological conflicts. How do you stay in your heart? So, so welcome aboard and let's get started. So Finn, tell us a little bit about your spiritual journey. We read a tiny bit about it in the bio, but tell us about your spiritual journey that helps inform you and some of the amazing work that you're doing.
Yeah, thank you. Well, just to preface that too, like I feel like every time I'm ever on some sort of teleconference or podcast, there's always like some sort of technological thing that happens. So I'm used to it. I'm like, well, this is kind of part of the process, right? So I was a minister in the Church of Christ in Texas in my 20s, and my dad was a minister too, and it was something that I've always connected with, having an inner life and a spiritual life that I wanted to connect with people, and I had inquiry a lot about life, but I didn't really relate through the church, and it took me a really long time to figure that out and to come out of the closet. I was married to a woman for a while, for almost a decade, and it was a lot of struggle for me. And once I came out of the closet, I started, connecting with guys in a sexual kind of way, but I didn't really understand how much shame I really had in me until I was, quote unquote free. So that led me into my current work. I feel like my work found me because it's just been what I've been immersed in since I was a little kid. It kind of chose me, and I didn't set out to be sex and intimacy coach or teach tantra or anything, but it just kind of evolved in my life.
So it sounds like your own healing though is what brought you to the work, healing your own shame, your own stories about the differentiation between sex and spirit, and finding a way for that to be unified. So yeah, anything else about
Absolutely. Yes.
what helped you wake up to the fact that I'm this amazing queer man who has gifts that I want to channel through my body to others? When did that start happening for you?
Like I did that when I was a little kid. I mean, I was groomed to speak at church. I ministered when I was younger, and I loved doing that. I always I felt passionate about helping and teaching and being involved and in a leadership way. They weren't my words, they were words that were handed to me. Once I experienced being in relationship, because I think that there's a way of being gay and, going out and meeting people and hooking up and, having fun maybe, but not really being in a context that makes one have to look at the relational wounds that we've acquired in that way. So for me, relationship brought all that to the surface. It just brought it up, and my body, it's like my body would feel inhibition, or it would feel stuck or unable to really connect with my partner. And I felt so held back, and I wanted to so badly, but I didn't know how to. All I knew is how to hide, suppress myself, hook up with strangers, or, I didn't know how to be in love and connect. So that led me into the inquiry.
Great. Yeah. Well, it sounds like one of my teachers, one of my first mentors was a man who nobody listened to him as a kid. So from that, his wound was about not being heard. And so what did he do? He became a psychologist and taught people how to actively listen. So it sounds like that's your story, your right. Shame story as a gay queer boy, and having to suppress that brought you into now being the teacher of intimacy and teaching others how to really connect to their bodies and connect to something deeper or more, if I'm hearing you correctly.
Absolutely. I mean, I felt like initially, the original wound for me was that these two integral pieces don't belong together, sex
Mhm.
and spirit. So all along I've been trying to put those back together. And, I think we can move to somewhere like San Francisco or New York or, these big cities that we enjoy a level of freedom sexually, but it doesn't mean that it's just going to kind of erase everything that we've been through all along the way to get here. So that's been my emphasis, I think, is, like the healing piece around why it's challenging to feel seen, why it's challenging to be vulnerable in sex for people. And I work with a lot of couples. I love working with couples, especially helping them understand how to find connection with each other, because the gay community has, a certain template that it's accepted commonly, and it's challenging. Can be.
Great, great.
Yeah.
For me, I keep wanting, and I'm trying to tease you into some introspection for yourself, for all of these folks to listen to, because I've been around you and heard pieces of your story which are quite amazing to me, but for me it's all about that hunger inside, and that hunger inside is all
Yes.
about what I call a hunger for God. But that hunger for God, how does that happen in partnership, in sex, in touching a tree, or in political activism? How's that hunger, take us further? And I see
Right.
you as somebody who's really a pioneer in helping people make that connection through their bodies, that intimacy of kind of seeing behind the physical to something even greater.
Yes. I mean, I think it's something that I really cherish, is this idea that sex is an entry point, for the existential meaning, like you're describing. Um, it's a connection to the meaning of who we are, and it's an expression, and it's not something for me that just a physical experience alone really satisfies me anymore, because like if we go out and we have just a physical experience, that may be what we need to have for permission, but I want the meaning underneath it, and that's what I'm looking for, and I think that's what we're all looking for.
Mhm.
Did the microphone cut out just a little
For
bit?
a second bit, we're okay.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, so the meaning, like we're hungering for a context, like these acts that we do physically, they are all associated in our minds with some sort of psychological context and like a spiritual context, and they come from places in our lives that we formed attachment as children, and when we want to have we're often repeating these dynamics that we absorbed as children, and they're like fractures that we inherited because we weren't encouraged to be in touch with our bodies, and we had to sneak a lot, and um, so we recreate these patterns, I think, again and again and again, and the emotions that want to be experienced and felt and healed and moved through, so that joy becomes the experience that we have, and maybe not so much like guilt or shame or anxiety that can underlie our experience. But a lot of people, they look for sexual experiences that recreate that same concoction of emotions, like of shame or guilt or anxiety of some kind. um, and that's the thing that you want to pay attention to, like if it's like I only get turned on whenever I feel like I'm doing something wrong, or
Mm,
I only get turned on if
mm,
I'm being a little bit dishonest or something. Like that's the entry point into what I
mm.
mean about the meaning, like it's almost like it's moving through us and wanting to resolve some of these initial fractures.
Great. So kind of like you, it sounds like. So the shame, the shame, how you've worked with your own shame. So now you're
Hmm.
able to listen to people deeply and go, so you want somebody to like, demean you in your sexual experience. So what's the story underneath of that? Is that what you're telling us?
Exactly. Yeah. Instead of picking like an identity or a kind of kink to land on, and those things are great, to experience. But if we don't have an inquiry about the meaning, like you're, describing, then we can't get to the roots. So there's this
Got it.
concept of burning through our fantasy to get to the root, and then once we get to that root, we burn through the next set of fantasy and get to the next root, and we're always getting more deeply
Mm,
into our own core. And when I
mm,
I believe that's the spiritual journey, is to keep
right.
excavating for meaning and actualizing. Yes. And having sex be an expression of all that, not just this thing that we go do and then come back to our lives. It's an
Yeah.
expression of all of that. It's an integrated act.
Yeah. Or even a path. So you use the word expression, and maybe sex is the path for many of us.
Actually, yes. And yeah, they can be. Yeah, and for that, people enter in many different ways. For me, it is because I utilize it as a window into what is going on with me and what does want to come up and be healed. And I believe that it's connected to everything about who we are. It's not just sex. Like what's showing up in my erotic world is showing up in my professional life. It's
Mhm,
showing up in the way that I communicate with people or drop the ball or whatever.
mhm,
It's a window in.
mhm,
And practicing in the sense, like how does one practice? It's, maybe sometimes I don't feel like being physical with my partner. But the reason I don't feel like being physical is because I'm holding on to a resentment. And so it makes me, have to share that, and dig into some of these uncomfortable things that we may not want to share with people, or that's one example.
mhm,
Or maybe I'm feeling really low about myself and I start to really get into a graspy space about sex. And that graspiness is telling me
mm.
that I need to tend to my life in some other area, and that sex isn't going to give me what I'm looking for, maybe. And I actually find what I'm needing when I get back into my center, so those are a couple of examples.
Yeah, that's delicious. Yeah, 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 yeah. I mean, helping folks, helping ourselves just check in, like what's the energy behind what it is that we're doing, and when it comes to sexing and connecting through sex, what's the energy and what's going on inside of me to make that connection. So, powerful work that you're doing. Thank you. So great
Yeah,
introduction
thank
to
you.
kind of the next question. And so, all of these calls are just playing with the idea that are we a queer tribe? Might we be? And do you see
Mm.
us a queer tribe? Certainly, obviously, these calls are about the fact that we kind of think there is a queer tribe out there, and that somehow we're all called to be
Mm.
different roles and functions, but in that queer tribe to bring forth a mission or some contributions. But the question is yours. Do you think we're a queer tribe?
I
Or how
do.
we're a queer tribe?
I do. I mean, I think that the tribe is there, right? Are we paying attention? Are we allowing ourselves in? Are we showing up for the tribe, right? But
Sure.
we're a global tribe. And yeah. So queer tribe. What does that mean, right? It's like, are we in little groups of people that we find sexy and attractive, or are we like opening our hearts and like using our sexuality as a way to greater whole? So for
Mm,
me, and that question, what that means is, queer people have been on the outside of acceptance, and 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 it makes it challenging to find meaning and purpose in life, because they're outliers. But at the same time, it's like a blessing, because then it's like we don't have the prescriptive mandates always that other people do, like the heterosexual people do in relationship, or
mm,
just their cultural niche. So it allows us to be creative and to help bring balance to those spaces that our relationship needs to be cultivated in the world and in our country. And we bring a way to do that in a freedom and a playfulness, and asking questions, about certain types of relationship, or even spirituality, questioning the mythological structure of everything, and bringing a blend of gender and identity. It subverts everything. So being able to work on ourselves and get to a healed place in ourselves about, our own, having been on the outlying, helps bring balance to people and helps it shift, I think, in acceptance. That's my opinion.
Great. Yeah. So part of the queer tribe for you, though, is about being an outlier and the gifts that come from being the outlier. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes. Vantage point.
Yes.
Yeah. Perspective, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Great. Yeah. So let's take that a little further then. So I know you're doing lots of really amazing work personally and professionally. I'm wondering, though, if you have a vision for us as a queer tribe, or a vision for us as a movement of all of the letters, or even as gay men or queer men, or all of the letters of the queer tribe, which would be, LGBTQIA plus plus.
Right. I do. So yeah, my opinion about that is that, to me, there's a metaphor of of like the brain when it heals. There's usually pieces of our brain that don't really talk to each other, and a traumatized brain is little places all over, and they don't fire and completely connect. But as one heals and starts to connect these places together again, parts of the brain start to talk to each other that didn't used to talk to each other. And that creates a more integrated experience of one's reality, their mindfulness, their ability to stay in a centered place, and also feel connection with other people, right? Its connection is dependent on the ability to integrate. So I feel like as a queer tribe, my opinion is that we've done a really good job differentiating in some ways, and being like, we're different, and this is how we're different. And now I would like to see more integrating, and like, there's, in a way, we're very different than straight people and people from other countries, but we're not at all. And to bring it back together, and to integrate the model again. So we differentiate first because we need that. And some people really need to claim, an identity, for instance, because it's really helpful at one point. And I think that identity also is helpful to shed.
Identity is helpful to shed, is what you said? Yes. Beautiful. Yeah, with our last caller, we kind of played with this whole idea too, and his take was clearly around how all of us have come from various tribes, various religions, various countries, So in our very genetics, we have kind of a memory of being all the spectrum of what all the world is. So that makes us, allows us to be bridge builders across every tribe, if we choose to be, if we choose to listen to the calling.
Yes.
Does that resonate?
It does. And there's this quote that I really appreciated from an anthropologist. I can't remember his name right now, but like, it's like a fish doesn't know that it's wet until it's out of water.
Right.
And I love that quote, because it's like, when we're immersed in whatever we think is reality, we don't even know until we're outside of that. And that's, speaking to this outlier piece, if we can heal the part that hurts because we've been rejected, then that makes us very powerful in the way that we can really help integrate and connect. And people that have been accepted, a lot of them are living lives that they want to break out of that programmatic way of living. And I think we do have ability to help in that space a lot.
Great. So stay with me around this whole thing of vision, whether it's vision that you have for the clients that you work with, or whether it's for us as the queer tribe in what we're doing in trying to change the world about all the injustices that are happening. How do you see your life as a sexual healer, as a gay man who's on this path of consciousness to teach about intimacy. How do you see, just what's your vision for the work? What do we have next to do, either as a big group, or you are like really hearing, oh yeah, in the days of Trump, I know more now than ever that, you know, the sex and intimacy stuff is critical, because I need to shed all this crap so that I can actually show up and remember who I am. I'm putting words in your mouth, but you know, tell me what your vision.
No, but you're saying it.
I'm sorry, what?
Yeah, what you're saying, I love, and I do think that. I think that's like showing up. I was saying that what you're saying, I totally agree with. I think the idea of showing up and what that means is, you know, taking charge of our healing process in whatever way that we can. You know, I think in the healing community in this city, there's a lot of opportunity, but there's so much of a bypass sometimes. And I think that the way into the healing process is really directly into the darkness and to the things that we hate to look at. And, you know, you brought up Trump. I feel like it's this a symbolic, you know, thing that it's America's having to deal with the shadow, you know, and around sex and in every way, the shadow. So if we can go into that space, with our own bravery and make space for other people to do that process, I feel like that's my vision. Is I really, you know, we can go to places to feel spiritual, but if we don't do that work inside of our own selves and really dig into what we're holding and keeping ourselves locked and blocked to other people, and we won't really be able to integrate those experiences of spirituality. And, you know, that's what I think. And making space for other people to do that too, you know, not being afraid to look at the darkness in other people, not being afraid to look at the fear that other people are carrying, because it's, you know, it's part of who we are.
And it's part of who particularly you are, as far as, you know, one of the gifts that I hear when I'm in your presence, in the words that you share and the stories that you tell, is that you are ever what I call challenging people to be peaceful warriors, to really face their fears, to really look into the dark, to find the treasure, you know, to unearth the treasure that's within that dark space within themselves. So what an incredible gift that is.
Yes.
Do you have any?
Well, thank you. Yeah, I mean, because you know, go ahead.
I was going to say, do you have a quick story of kind of helping somebody transform from facing some of their darkness into something different, before we open up the line for questions? Anything come to mind?
Yes.
Ones that you can tell.
Yeah. So the first part of what you said cut out. Was it? Yeah. Was it a method? You're saying was the question about a way to start with that process?
No, if you have a story, maybe of a client you worked with.
Yeah, something that came out of, you know, I know for myself, you know, I was sexually abused as a kid. So I know how to heal somebody who's been sexually abused because I have experienced that. So you have gone through all this shame stuff. You brought much of it, and you're ever teaching people about how to connect intimately while dropping all of this shame. So I was just curious if there was a story you wanted to tell before we open up the lines for questions.
I don't have a particular story about a client or anything to tell, but I will say from my own experience though, and myself, you know, like we're always investing in some level of an outward persona, you know, and if we are largely investing, and I've done this so many times, and I think it's a continual process, like it continues to go, and we continue as we evolve, we find new layers of like the artifice
Mhm.
And, you know, outward artifice is meant to like hide all this other stuff that we don't want people to know about us, or what we don't want people to think, you know, then that comes off in a way that's it's authentic. So there's a tremendous amount of power. In answer to your question about how to get into that, you know, there's so much personal power and authenticity and spiritual potential in actually moving towards the places that are scary. And then who we are on the outside is not like an effort to kind of like suppress everything. It becomes, it's an expression of who we are. And that's how sex kind of dovetails into this as well. Like sex becomes, you know, who we are versus like a way to try to get approval, or a way to, you know, feel better about ourselves, or, you know, something. It becomes like an expression of this healed place and like joy, and what other people call, you know, what someone calls the divine. People call that many different things,
Yeah.
but it's about healing and integration.
Great,
Yeah.
great. Thank you. Thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think we're at a point that if anybody who's on the call might want to unmute yourself and say hello to Finn if you have a question for him.
Yeah, just go right ahead and unmute yourself.
Is there anybody? And if not, we'll just keep going. But just wanted to give all of you a chance to check in. Where's
Jan,
this conversation
I think
going?
I
Great.
see Jan has unmuted. Jan,
Great.
Should I just dive in here?
Yeah, go
Yes,
ahead.
yes, please.
So Finn, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, Finn, I'm just curious, what patterns are you seeing with gay men? There's a lot of discussion about, you know, how did we survive? What are the casualties that, you know, in surviving the AIDS era and this whole new, there's been so many things that have hit us, and a lot of gay men are not doing too well if you just look at statistics. What are the main core, if you want to say, like, what are you encountering, if you can kind of encapsulate it? Are there like different patterns? There's one specific pattern? What do you?
Yeah, I love that question. It's, you know, it's a lot of different patterns that kind of come down to one thing, and that is like many gay men haven't, as children, been loved for who they were. They were rejected by family. You know, they experienced relational and attachment wounds as children, and sex became an act of like splitting off and hiding, and all the fear that came around that, and what society tells you about disease and all this stuff. So by the time we're adults, you know, gay men, the biggest thing that I see is in my work is men that are like wanting to have stable relationships, and they just don't know how to have a relationship often at the same time that they're having sex, because it's like, well, they've only known how to do that with substances, or with hooking up with strangers, or,
Wow.
you know, it doesn't have like a relational context that's built into the culture. So the culture itself is really, I think, at a stage of really still, you know, having sex for permission, which is needful, you know, but after, okay, I have permission to do this, now what? You know, it's a building it back into relationship. That's the thing that I see the biggest problem in. And then creating sustainable relationships, and being able to connect and talk to their partners and about desire. It's a big struggle, because the quickest thing to do is they get to a spot where it's challenging, and then open relationships are the norm in the gay community. So even though can be an awesome way to go with your relationship, it's not an answer to an inability to communicate, or an inability to, like, you know, move past your own inhibitions, or, you know, build trust with your partner. So I think that's probably one of the biggest things that I see. It's easy to go hook up. Inhibitions don't get touched as much with a hookup, because it's not a relational context that brings you in the space of love like relationship does. And in love's eyes and gays, then all these things come back all the way from childhood that are not there. You know, I don't feel that at a sex party. I feel different parts of myself.
Great.
And then there's an emphasis, I think, too, on, you know, sustaining a certain kind of sexual mythology. You know, it's not sustainable really, and men are trying to live this mythological sexual being that doesn't really exist, and they think that they're, you know, something's wrong with them, and there's nothing wrong with them. There's just like, it's a lot of shit to work through, you know, and to be honest about and to be vulnerable about, and you can't take enough substance over that, you know, it's still going to be there.
Great, thank you. That was good.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you. Is there anybody else who wants kind of a last question opportunity before we wrap up with some comments and some things to plug? Anybody else? Kind of burning question?
I've got a question.
Yes.
Let me turn on my video.
Yeah.
Sure. There you are.
My name's Firelight. I've got a question.
Hi.
Yeah.
Firelight, where are you from? Where are you sitting?
I'm from Seattle. I'm calling in from Seattle.
Oh, yummy.
Great.
Thank you.
Hey.
Yes.
Hi.
Yeah, I appreciate what you've been in about how following the fantasy or the kink can kind of lead us towards something that's kind of a spiritually underlying cause, and there's an opportunity for healing there. And I'm curious, I've encountered a lot of folks that, including myself in some ways, that because pornography has been so available for people my age and younger, we've grown up with being aroused by a very heady kind of imaginative fantasy
Right.
that in my experience actually disconnects us from being present with people. And I'm just curious if you've had experience working with people about that
Yes.
dynamic.
Thank you for that question. That's actually another one of the biggest things I see, and that's one of my favorite things to work around with people too, is to encourage. It's tricky too, because I think we've all been moralized against for sexuality. So it's like when I start talking about this with someone, I'm like, how do I position this in a way that they don't think I'm saying this is wrong, you shouldn't be doing it, it's bad? But like, to give up porn and to like experience your own turn on is really challenging, because like you said, it's been a conditioning. It's just about conditioning, you know, you like do it again and again and again and again, and like get really high on, you know, constantly revolving images. And then also it's called psychogenic, right? It's developed in your brain. It's not from the source of the body, like being like stimulated or, you know, again, expressing. And porn also is a, you know, it's like a digital vicarious experience of somebody else's idea of what desire is. And I often encourage men to put away porn and say, you can always come back to it if you want. Like, it's not, you know, you can always come back. But to experiment for like, you know, 3 months with like, don't watch it, play with yourself, like pleasure yourself in the mirror, explore that's when you start to hear all the thoughts, you know, like if you look in the mirror and pleasure yourself and really try to get in touch with who am I as a being, then you start to hear the chatter a lot around like our body image and deservingness. And then it's outrageous for some people to try this, like, oh, I can't do that. No. Why not? Like, it's your body. It's like, you know, and like learning to just like watch yourself express and feel comfortable in that. And I practice that a lot in my own sexual practice. I found it to be very helpful for me personally. Like when I quit watching porn several years back, there's a bump of time that felt like, oh no, I can't get aroused anymore. What happened? And then like now it's gotten to where if I come across porn, it doesn't really turn me on, even because my experience is so much more enlivening to me. And I've seen that in a lot of the people that I work with as well. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, totally. Thank you. That's helpful.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great.
Yeah, because our bodies have this, you know, all the different energies in us that we look for in porn. When we go to look for porn, we're looking for an energetic component or like some meaning, you know, but it's through the entry of these digital images. And if we can find that in our own bodies, we unlock expression, we unlock sensation, we unlock the ability to connect with people that aren't our type, you know, and it's freeing.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you.
We probably have maybe a minute if somebody else, if there's on the call that wants a last question before we have kind of closing comments. Anybody else want to check in? Say hello to Finn?
All right. Jan has another question.
Round two with.
Okay, yes.
Here we go.
Okay.
We can do one
Yes.
more. Thank you.
Okay, am I on for round two?
You are.
Yes.
You are.
Okay,
Great.
so this is actually a question for Kirk, because I was like enjoying you were just like going yes, 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 and you are in a similar as a erotic somatic practitioner, if I can call you that.
Yes.
Do you have anything to add to what Finn was saying? I mean, it seems like we have this, you know, sexual emotional disconnect. We've got the pornography. What else would you say, or what else are you seeing?
What else am I seeing?
With clients.
Oh, I see. Yeah. So you know, obviously the kind of people that come to see me are really on a very conscious path. So they're wanting to work. But one of the kind of vulnerabilities that I see even among very conscious folks is the rampant use of party drugs that are often, you know, taking them away from their bodies and listening through their hearts and making rational decisions. So that's just often just kind of one of those things that you know, because I do not have bias. In fact, you know, my beloved right here, you know, had one of the most amazing kind of shamanistic journeys, you know, doing a drug experience. So big believer that people can do, you know, some drugs with some mindfulness and go on a spiritual journey or take them into some healing. However, that is, if there's anything that I'm still just seeing flow. And the other one is just how slowly but surely all the stuff that Finn's talking about our sexuality, we're in this cloudy time. And so people are beginning to do a little more repression around how they express themselves, or less consciousness around expressing themselves consciously. And I think part of that has to do just with the times in which living. But, you know, those are really two huge topics that you can interview me on another day. But thank you for your question. Did that help?
I love what you're saying.
Yeah. I mean, this is just, it's a fact. We've got a fascinating territory to unravel. And
Yes,
I feel like
absolutely.
with gay men, so much of our energy has been going out for like equal rights and marriage equality, and we've got a lot of casualties, and we need to bring that in, do this work.
Yes, and I hear you use that word numerous times. So my hunch is that's one of your gifts. One of your gifts is to gather in the people who have been part of the casualties. So that was free. Yeah. All right. Thank you so much for questions.
Yes.
All right, so we're going to need to do some closing remarks from Finn and from us, and then kind of tell you about some upcoming stuff. So, Finn, any kind of closing thoughts for, you know, this conversation could go on and on and on, obviously, but any closing thoughts as you think about who we are, or anything that's kind of left undone from what we've said so far?
I just think that the healing journey is something that I really feel passionate as a group, you know. So closing thoughts would be, you know, to evaluate what that is in one's own life and how to connect with other people about that. You know, often getting together, you know, for fun things to do with people. People are often like, oh, let's keep this light and fun. But I really value making space and connecting with other guys about what they need emotionally and what they've been going through, and helping support in a healing kind of way. And that builds trust and vulnerability in the exchange of vulnerability, and that makes solidarity between people, I think.
Great. Is there anything that you have upcoming that you want to let us know about, or ways in which people might plug into your work, Finn? So now's your time to share that.
Yes. So thank you for that. Yeah. So October 5th, I'm hosting a cuddle party. And that is an event for men to be able to explore intimate touch without the expectation or the pressure of sex, so they can really start to look at their thoughts and boundaries and play. When we play, we facilitate the event. So there's cuddling, like freestyle cuddling, but there's also exercises that we do, and that's going to be really fun. And I'm also assisting with a Tantra workshop on November 16th and 17th with Jason Tantra here in the Bay as well. And if you're interested in that, I really think Jason's an amazing teacher, and that event's going to be really special. It provides somatic exercises to do to access some of the ways into the body that we were talking about today. That's on November 16th.
And how do people make contact?
My website has all the things. To go to my website, and that is finndeerhart.com, DEERHART.com, and I have an event section, and that would include all the events coming up, and those two that I just mentioned as well, and to maybe sign up for my newsletter.
Great.
Did I spell that? Can you see in the chat box, Finn? Did I spell it right?
DEE.
Yes.
Yeah, good. Great.
Okay.
Yes.
Great. All right. Well, so thank you, Finn, and from Flesh and Spirit community, Donny and I also welcome you. That if any of you are ever in San Francisco, please come and check out the work that we're doing at fleshandspirit.org. So we'd love to have you. So our desire is to continue these conversations and to keep thought leaders who are really seeing a vision for not only who we are, but where we're going. So we'll keep doing that, and we'll send out about the next call. We have a number of people lined up, but we don't have the dates for them yet. So as soon as we do, we'll send that out to all of you. So make sure that you've signed in so that we can send you things as well. So thank you so much, Finn, for sharing your heart, sharing your body, sharing your consciousness. You help heal first yourself, but the world. So thank you. And to all of you who've been on the call, thank you so much. Namaste.
Namaste. Thank you all. See you next time.
See you next time.
Thank you, Kirk. Bye, guys. Thank
Bye-bye.
you so much.
End record.